one of the great values. It's almost like a superpower that Donald Trump possesses is he makes the enemies of America drop the mask, so to speak, right? It's like once upon a time you could say, well, you know, they have plausible deniability with regard to what they are, what they care for, what they stand for. It's really hard to make that case anymore. It's so self-evident. So when it comes to law and order, specifically, what are a few of the things that are part of the Democrat Party brand now? Well, fraudulent elections would be one thing, right? They are adamantly opposed to ID to vote. In fact, in California, Newsom has passed a law that prohibits any local jurisdiction from requiring an ID to vote. You need it to buy a cigar or a beer or get on an airplane, but voting, no. Mail-in ballots, they love that because, boy, is that a great way to cheat. Dirty voter rules. One of the things that a lot of the Democrat states are implementing is automatic voter registration. Motor voter, you sign up for, you get a license, you automatically register to vote, and dirty voter rules are the mother's milk of cheating in elections. So, and then one of my favorites, election machinery. Now the fact is, and if you've heard me before, you know that I've made the point that the tabulators that we use in South Carolina are explicitly unconstitutional. Article 2, Section 1 says, "Thou shalt not count in private." Well, that piece of paper goes in the tabulator, and at the end of the night, you get a count. I defy anyone to explain to me how that's not counting in private. However, by the way, Democrats are not the only ones who are in favor of the election machinery. That's a bit of an issue we have. What else? Open and broken borders. Well, if the last 4 years haven't taught us anything, it's taught us that, by golly, let's spend as much tax money as we can to get people here illegally for their own purposes, we know. And then once they're here, let's give them more tax money to keep them here, keep them happy. By the way, SNAP is about to run out, right? So the food stamps I don't suggest anybody spend Saturday morning in any of the big blue cities this week. Just see how that goes. Human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. Well, the Biden administration themselves admitted to having lost over 300,000 children that have come across the border. And they've admitted this to the traffickers, and it's lawlessness, right? What else? Overall, soft on crime. And we know that George Soros' Money Open Society Foundation has invested a lot of money, we're going to hear about prosecutors tonight, in getting prosecutors, especially in deep blue districts, elected so that they can ignore the law and turn the criminals loose. Cashless bail, catch and release, short sentences, etc. We're not without our own issues in South Carolina, however, not just in the blue districts, the cities. I suspect we're going to hear some more of that tonight. Violence against political opposition. Well, they tried to kill Trump. They did kill Charlie Kirk. And the violence that we're seeing, it's overt, it's out in the open, it's being routinely encouraged. Right? So sometimes I wake up and it's hard to believe we're living in this time. The things that we see, it's amazing. Let's disarm the law-abiding. In an environment where we're turning the criminal class loose, you know, the poor girl that got killed on the light rail the other month in August, right? That guy had been, it's tough if you're the police, right? Because they keep catching the guys, and then they let them back out on the street. So disarm the law-abiding. So if the criminals are the only ones with guns, let's disarm the rest of us. And okay, all right. of probably run out of, oh, here we go, opposed efforts to deport the illegals, right? So we got the illegals in, Trump comes in, next thing you know, Maryland, man, the Democrats go to the mat to keep these guys here. There was no due process when they let them in. And it's just, okay. Hey now. Well, you get the idea. Probably won't. I won't bother with the next 3 slides. How about that? So I don't know if this is, okay, there we go. All right, that's fine. So, you know, you get the point that, in my view, and some of these things are not supported just by the Democrats, but some of our Republican brethren as well. And then again, that's why there's sometimes some disunity within our party. And before I introduce our first speaker tonight, I will simply share with you, not yet. Okay, not yet. The fact that, you know, this soft on crime brand, it's not a new thing, really. It's just that, as I say, it's become so much more obvious to even casual observers of the political scene. Right? The rest of us have known for a long time. As I was thinking about what I want to talk about here, how am I doing? Yeah, good. This video clip kept coming up in my mind. I just thought I'd share it. It's very brief. I don't know how many of you are familiar with The Simpsons, television show. It's been around a long time. And this clip is from circa 1990. And so,
I'll be back. You can't keep the Democrats out of the White House forever. And when they get in, I'm back on the streets with all my criminal buddies.
that's 35 years ago, right? And so they were already talking about that party being soft on crime. So as Republicans, we're against all this stuff. Law and order, right? If freedom is the first value. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Woo! As Republicans, you know, if freedom is the first value that we care about, well, in a lawless society, there is no real freedom, right? Law and order is one of the first prerequisites for freedom in a society. Otherwise, we suffer at the tyranny of the criminal class. And we're not for that. We are really against that. So, going to go ahead and get the program started. With that said, I don't know if you want to check and see if that's working. Okay. First speaker up, David Stumbo has been a solicitor in the 8th Circuit now for, well, since 2012, I believe. And prior to that, he worked in the AG's office and has generally been a good guy prosecuting criminals for a long time. And I'm sure he's going to give you some more on that. And if I might, with that, David Stumbo.
This is for the room.
All right, very good. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that kind introduction.
Thank you.
I am David Stumbo. Thank you all for having me to beautiful York County and TBK. I've never been here to this club and this course. Got to see the first tee box back here. What a beautiful place and venue. So thank you all for having me here tonight. I'm glad you started with this stuff, Scott, about the condition we're in our country right now. Y'all got a lot of these palm cards on your seats. If you want to grab that, on the back of this, you'll see a picture of myself, my wife Vanessa, who you'll tell right off I completely outkicked my coverage big time with my wife Vanessa, and our 4 children plus daughter-in-law. So my son, who's on the far left, is 23 now, Gabriel. He is married. He and his wife live in Fountain Inn. He works at BMW. Very proud. His wife Hannah's next to him, and then Maggie right on my side, and then Hallie, Ruth, and Annie. And the reason I got into public service in the first place, and the reason why I stay in a public service job, and I'm sure Solicitor Pascoe and Solicitor Brackett could say the same thing. We went to law school, and a lot of our classmates went out and made $1 gazillion and made great money, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing that at all, but I think we decided that we wanted to go into a field where we could leave a community that's better for our families. So I want my family and my kids to have a better place to live in than what we're seeing in our country right now. And so I think it's very important to start with family first and foremost. I love the profession I've been able to serve in as a circuit solicitor for the last 13 years. Served in the Attorney General's office before that. I'll give you a little bit about my background and history before we get into our platform and why we're running for AG. But this is an important race. And any of your, just like Scott pointed out, we have a country right now that one of the most important places for George Soros, he mentioned George Soros, where did he put most of his political dollars? He was putting it into district attorneys' races around the country, especially in blue states and in big cities. And why do you think he did that? Because he wanted chaos. He wanted to break down law and order. And so these races are extremely important. A lot of people we have to explain to what we do. What is a solicitor? You know, people come from states where they've heard of a district attorney, but they've never heard of what a solicitor does. But it's been the honor of my life to be able to serve as a circuit solicitor, as a courtroom lawyer. It is one of the best jobs in the world, and I think my colleagues in the room that are solicitors, and former solicitor Tommy Pope in the back, who's now a House member, would agree with me that being able to try cases in front of a jury, put bad guys in jail, and keep our families safe is one of the best jobs you can have as an attorney. So it has been an honor to be the 8th Circuit solicitor. So I've had to explain a couple times tonight what the 8th Circuit is. 8th Circuit is Greenwood, Lawrence, Newberry, and Abbeville counties. I have 4 counties in my circuit. Western side of the state, I had about a 2-hour drive from home tonight here at TDK. Go back to the western side of the state, and if I go through Chester and then Newberry, and then I'll end up in Greenwood, my hometown. And Newberry is one of my counties. It's probably the closest one to here. Whitmire, another little town not far from here, is actually in our circuit as well. But we work with 4 sheriff's offices. We work with a whole lot of police departments. Every single criminal case that is made in those police departments, from murder down to property crimes, drug trafficking, domestic violence, felony DUIs, you name it. Crimes committed that carry over 30 days come to our office, and that about 8,000 to 9,000 cases a year. In our circuit, we're a rural circuit, small circuit. We have about 17 attorneys to handle those, so you can do the math. We have hundreds of cases per lawyer, so we have a lot of work to do. But it's good, honorable work, and I'm proud to be the solicitor of the 8th Circuit. Have been since 2012. What got me to that point? Let me give you a little bit about my life history. I grew up in a family of 10 kids. I was the second oldest of 10 children. And I met this lovely family back here in the back with 8 children tonight, and I remember that well growing up in a family. I can tell you it's a lot of fun today when we have family reunions and go meet at the beach every couple years. My parents now have 38 grandkids amongst us 10, and 4 of them are mine. So, we have a good time when we go to family meetings, but family always meant a lot to me. My parents were very conservative. They were Republicans. They were pro-life. They had me going to, I went twice to the March for Life in DC growing up as a kid to pray that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. And praise God, it has been at this point, and our legislature was able to pass the heartbeat bill so we could save unborn babies here in South Carolina. But that is part of who I am and part of what we did growing up. My folks after me, I never homeschooled, but some of my younger siblings, they homeschooled. Parental choice in education is very important to me because we've done that in my family. My kids have homeschooled, gone to public schools, and gone to private Christian schools. So we've kind of run the gamut with our 4 kids, and it's very important to me that parents have the ability to make those choices. Your Attorney General is going to have to fight those battles in court for parents to be able to have the rights to choose their children's education. But that comes from a lot of my upbringing. Fast forward a little bit, high school, I did nothing but play ball. I played baseball and basketball religiously. Tell my kids this now, y'all spend way too much time looking at these screens. When we got bored, we were looking for a gym so we could get a game of pickup basketball, and it was a great childhood. Ended up playing college on the college level. I played at a little school called Toccoa Falls College over in Georgia, played baseball and basketball on the college level, and that's really all I wanted to do at that time. But I guess towards the end of that, I had to decide, what am I going to do professionally for a living? I was either going to go teach high school and coach, or as my mom always told me, she said, David, you're really good at arguing with me, and so I think you'd probably be pretty good at arguing in a courtroom, so why don't you think about law school? And so I spent 3 years with my brother running a small business in Greenwood. We had a sign company. I got married to my lovely wife, Vanessa, during that time, but learning to run a small business was a great experience for me. I got to learn. I think it helps me in court now, because when I'm arguing to juries, who are on my juries? Regular folks, people that run businesses, that teach in our schools, that work in our hospitals, and I really felt like that was a great life experience, learning how to, I don't know, probably have a lot of small business owners in the room. That is not easy to do, to run a business, and I learned a lot of lessons there during that time with my older brother Jonathan. After that, I did go to law school. 3 years after undergrad, ended up going to USC School of Law, became an attorney, and really my goal when I started out there was I wanted to work with law enforcement and I wanted to be a prosecutor. And I was able to get a job in the Attorney General's office while I was in law school. Worked with some people that are still there today. I helped Bob Cook, who's one of the senior lawyers there, writes legal opinions. Helped when I was in law school, I helped draft legal opinions with him. I also worked with some of the criminal divisions within that office, learned a lot about criminal law, criminal appeals, post-conviction relief, all these different areas that they worked on. I actually got to work on a religious liberty case with Bob Cook out of Great Falls, where some Wiccan priestess sued the town of Great Falls because they prayed in Jesus' name, if you can imagine that. And so I helped with that lawsuit that the Attorney General's office was involved in. Learned a lot, but my goal was to fight crime, work with law enforcement, keep our families safe. And so I was able to get a job at the Attorney General's office right out of law school. My first job was prosecuting sexually violent predator cases, and that kind of jumped in the deep end with some pretty nasty subject matter, dealing with a lot of child predators. Those were civil cases, but then at the time, the Attorney General's office was starting this Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And I was able to be assigned to that as the lead prosecutor as a very young guy. That was a blessing. God opened that door, I think, in that time in my career. I was able to try the first 2 cases we ever tried in this new Internet predator arena, where we SLED agents and other local agents that were with this task force would pose as 12, 13-year-old girls in these chat rooms. I don't know if y'all remember this show on NBC probably 20 years ago called To Catch a Predator. It was kind of like law enforcement was doing that for real too. That was a made-for-TV show. But the first 2 cases we tried in South Carolina under the criminal solicitation of a minor law. I was able to try those cases as a young guy. We got convictions and long sentences for these child predators. Shortly after that, I went and worked in the 11th Judicial Circuit for a guy named Donnie Myers, who the prosecutors in the room know who he is. Former Solicitor Pope and House Representative Pope got to work for Solicitor Myers as well. I worked there for 4 years in Lexington, and that's really where I learned how to be a prosecutor. I can tell you that because I got to do everything from murders to drug trafficking to felony DUI trials. I did a little bit of everything in that 4 years. Tried over 37 cases to a jury in just under 4 years. And that was a good time to be in that office. They encouraged that, trying the cases that needed to be tried in that office. I really had a good experience, not only trying a whole lot of cases in front of juries in Lexington, but resolving cases, learning how to work with crime victims, learning how to work with law enforcement. It was a great experience during those 4 years and allowed me to run for solicitor at a younger age. I did go back and work at the Attorney General's office for about a year and a half under Attorney General Wilson when he was hired, or when he was elected. He hired me to come work in the state grand jury, where I worked with state grand jury lawyers, prosecuting a lot of big drug trafficking conspiracies, some public corruption cases for that time I was there. Ultimately, though, I thought I'd be in that office, in the AG's office. My wife, Vanessa, and I had all 4 of our kids were born during that time period. So we had younger kids. Gabriel was 7. Our youngest one, Annie, was 2. It was 1 when we ended up moving. And the reason we did is the 8th Circuit at the time had a solicitor that law enforcement had zero confidence in. That solicitor that preceded me was not trying a whole lot of cases. They were having a lot of trouble with morale with law enforcement because I heard from 2 of the sheriffs in the 8th Circuit. And I grew up in Greenwood. My wife grew up in Lawrence County on a dairy farm, and so those were 2 of the counties of the 8th Circuit. And these sheriffs called me to a meeting and said, "David, we're not getting results here. And we're making these cases, they go up to court, they plead them down to nothing. It was all about the numbers, it was moving the docket." And they said, "We know you've got a reputation of someone who will try cases and take a tough approach to these criminals." And so decided after going home, Vanessa and I prayed about it. It was a crazy notion that we would leave a pretty stable job in Columbia and move home. I had a lawyer in Greenwood, John McCravey, who's in the house now, that hired me for that year. Did some work on the civil side in his office while I ran for solicitor. And as I said before, I had plans to probably stay in Columbia and be in the Attorney General's office for a while, but we make our plans and God laughs at them, and he opened this door. And so we just walked through it and decided, okay, this is the next step. And so we decided to move back to Greenwood. We ran a race against an incumbent solicitor, which I know now is very difficult, thankfully. It's hard to run against an incumbent solicitor, but at the time we did that. And the reason I got elected, y'all, was because law enforcement supported me, period. I don't get elected in that race if I didn't have the support of the sheriff's deputies and the police officers all over the 8th Circuit that were going to their church groups and their Little League games and saying, "David Stumbo's the guy that y'all need to vote for." And I'm well aware that law enforcement is who got me elected to this position as solicitor. And it has been the honor of my life, as I said before, to serve in this role. We've been able to prosecute dozens of murder cases, including we've had 4 capital death penalty cases in our circuit. I'm currently prosecuting 1. In fact, today in my office, these radical defense lawyers that represent people in the death penalty cases, on the one I have currently in Greenwood, dumped about 14 motions on my desk, and that's just par for the course in these death penalty cases now. It's become all about the mental health of the bad guy. And it's just crazy, and I know my colleagues in the room have had to deal with that, but I am currently prosecuting that case in Greenwood, a pretty horrific murder case. I can't really talk much about it because it's pending, and we're not allowed to do that as lawyers. But I will tell you all this, that's in a nutshell my background. We have lived in Lawrence County and in Greenwood County in the time I've served as solicitor. Like I said, my wife grew up on a dairy farm out in Lawrence. We cover a very big circuit. Some of the circuits only have 2 counties, like solicitor brackets, but they're more heavily populated. My circuit covers 4 counties, but it's a lot. It's 2,300 square miles. It's a lot of ground to cover, and we have a really good staff in my office that covers that ground well. So, why am I running for Attorney General? And this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and then I'll open the floor for a couple of questions while I still have time. If you watch the time for me, Scott, I don't know how long I've been talking. Okay, good. When I knew that the Attorney General's office was opening up, one of the things that I find that's absolutely critical is that we have someone in that office that is a prosecutor. The Constitution of our state says that the Attorney General is your chief prosecutor. And so to me, it would be ridiculous to elect someone who didn't have experience prosecuting cases in the courtroom and know what it takes to work with our law enforcement agencies, to work with crime victims, and to get the job done to keep our families safe. And so that's the first reason. And we have a lot of issues facing the state right now, guys. Thankfully the legislature passed the trafficking fentanyl statute a couple years ago. That was huge. I know Solicitor Brackett has prosecuted some pretty major trafficking cases. In Greenwood, we did the same thing. A couple years ago, what we were hearing is Greenwood was kind of the hub for these pill presses. And I think because Greenwood's off the interstate, a lot of the drug cartels had found that that was an easy place to press these little fentanyl pills that people were overdosing on. We found out through our law enforcement investigators, and we had federal officers, DEA agents that came and said, look, Greenwood's a problem we need to get after. And at the time, the one fentanyl pill that could kill somebody, you could buy it for $2 a pill on the streets of Greenwood. That's cheap in the drug world. In those 2 years, we have put away some major drug dealers, not only in our area, but ones that were connected to Charlotte and Atlanta and other places that were bringing this stuff into Greenwood. And today, the same fentanyl pill that went for $2 before now goes for 4 times that much. And so I know we're making a difference, we're making a dent. Now, can't take total credit for that because we did have a presidential election last year, and thankfully President Trump was elected and started to shut the border down because fentanyl was flooding across the border during the Biden years, folks. Absolutely flooding across our border. And so that was law enforcement was having a really hard time busting all these people because they would just, the supply was just so great. So that has also helped in the past 9 to 10 months since the administration has been in and done something about our border. So that is a major issue we have. Folks, I don't have time tonight. We could go through every criminal justice issue we have. One of the things we really need in this state is a gang bill. The solicitors have been advocating for this for some time. We need a state level RICO law to go after these street level gangs here that are shooting up our communities. What they're doing now is they're recruiting these young guys that are as young as 14, 15 years old. The gangs are putting the gun in their hands and saying, you settle disputes, you go out and shoot up the house of the guy that disrespected you. And we're seeing it left and right. And so one of the things we need to do to help build these cases and give us more tools to utilize grand juries, the statewide grand jury, which is in the Attorney General's office, but not only that, but on the local level as well, to build these conspiracy cases and compel testimony. Because right now, we don't have those tools on the state level to do that. So the solicitors have been advocating for this bill. We're going to continue to do that next year in the General Assembly. We need judicial reform in South Carolina. We need real judicial reform in South Carolina. Legislature passed a bill a couple years ago that was a small, tiny step in the right direction. But at the end of the day, we don't need lawyer legislators on the Judicial Merit Screening Commission that are practicing in front of the judges that they're electing. 100%, and we've been battling that. The solicitors in the room, Solicitor Pascoe and Solicitor Brackett, we've been battling that for years. And we wrote an op-ed piece a couple of years ago in the Post and Courier. I think it was January of 2023 before that session, and advocated for change in the way we elect judges. Again, I hope that this year we get real change. There seems to finally be some momentum on judicial reform. I know Representative Joe White from Newberry is hosting a forum in a couple of weeks down in Columbia and really trying to draw attention to this issue. I believe that the federal model is the best way to go about this. It's what we're all accustomed to. We're used to seeing the president nominate a Supreme Court justice after they've been vetted to make sure they're qualified. And I think that's where the JMSC could come in. JMSC is in the Constitution. We can't eliminate that. But we need that to be the screening committee, basically for the governor to make an appointment. And then the legislature confirms that vote, confirms that appointee up or down. That is the best way to do it, just like they do it in the federal system. And why? Because we've heard over and over, elections have consequences, right? if you have bad liberal judges appointed or nominated by the president, then there's consequences to that, right? You can go and elect a new president next time because they're electing or nominating bad justices and judges. So I think that is the route to go in South Carolina. Of course, you know, we've heard about popular elections. There's pros and cons to that model. I think there's probably a lot of cons to it, but by the same token, we've met with the North Carolina DAs over the last couple of years, the circuit solicitors, and as I asked a lot of the North Carolina DAs what they thought of popular elections in North Carolina, it's not the parade of horribles we've heard. So if the people in South Carolina decided, hey, we want, if the will of the people is to have popular vote elections for judges, I wouldn't stand in the way of that either. But I do believe that the federal model is the best way of getting after this and having a real accountability for our judges, okay? So we're going to really continue to fight that battle. I know Solicitor Pascoe and Solicitor Brackett have both spoken extensively about judicial reform in the past few years. So fighting crime, keeping our families safe, and having the bully pulpit of the Attorney General's office to do that is the #1 job. Secondly, though, we got to be strong and be conservative on our principles. And there's several issues that I can name off right now. I'm glad you brought up election integrity, Scott. That is a huge issue. And who fights those battles? Your Attorney General. So when there's challenges to voter ID, we fought those battles in South Carolina, and thankfully we won. Republicans have always been in favor of voter ID and election integrity. And it always baffled me, why in the world would the Democrats be opposed to it? And of course they talk about what disenfranchises voters. How hard is it to get an ID and take it to the polls with you? It's not hard. The only reason why you would want to be against voter ID is to cheat. I mean, there's no other reason. So I'm very glad in South Carolina that our elections are strong. We need to continue to make it that way because in California and other states, they continue to fight voter ID laws, and that affects our presidential elections. We need to really be vigilant on that issue. And the state AGs have a lot to say about that, particularly when presidential elections come around. You need an Attorney General that's been conservative, that will link arms with other Republican conservative AGs around the country and fight these battles in the courtroom. And I stand ready to do that if I'm elected your next AG. The right to life is very near and dear to my heart. I've already told you about, going to pro-life rallies as a kid. Not just that, my wife and I, Vanessa and I served and volunteered at crisis pregnancy centers and have given our time and our money over the years. In Columbia, I served on the board at Daybreak Crisis Pregnancy Center. We opened a new center in Lexington on my time on the board there and put 40 ultrasounds in each of those as we raised money to do that, so young girls could choose life for their kids when they came in. And Vanessa, I remember her being up on the phone on the hotline at night with, she would be on this rotation where she had the hotline come straight to our house. And I remember times 2 in the morning, she's up in bed talking a young girl out of ending her baby's life and saying, God loves you, God loves your baby, and we're going to be there with you. And not only did she do that, she went and taught parenting classes and childbirth classes to not just, we're not just going to ask you to choose life, but we're going to walk with you through that process. And so we need to be 100% pro-life in South Carolina. The heartbeat bill, I think, was a great start. I think we can go further with that, and we can save babies in our state. And so, as your Attorney General, I'm always going to stand on the side of life and protecting life in the womb. Parental freedom is huge for me, not only in how I've already talked about choosing your education for your children and what's right for your family, but medical freedom. Y'all, what happened in 2020 and 2021 during this COVID era never needs to happen again. Mask mandates, vaccine mandates, where people were losing their jobs because they refused to take the jab. Are you kidding me? I mean, that absolutely strikes against everything that we believe in America about freedom and liberty. And so we need to be vigilant, guys, because it could come again. I mean, look, what's the next pandemic? Who knows next time? But I can promise you this, that as your Attorney General, I'm going to fight battles to make sure that you're not forced to submit yourself or your children to medical freedom that you don't consent to. We're not doing that anymore. You're not going to lose your jobs in our state because you refuse to take a shot that we know now is hurting people. And so we were right, those of us that said, we're not taking it. So just know that's a big campaign platform of mine. We're going to fight those battles. Your AG is going to have to fight those. When our legislature passes conservative legislation, who defends it in court? Your AG. And so as a career, lifelong Republican and a conservative who has never wavered on these values, I'm going to fight for those things in the courtrooms of our state on the civil side and on the policy side. So I've been a conservative, I've been a prosecutor, a career prosecutor for over 2 decades. That's part of my background. And secondly, I've been a lifelong conservative Republican who's going to fight these battles in the courtroom for you when we have these issues that are going to come up. We're going to see these things again, because I'm telling y'all, the left, the woke, radical left is going to continue to attack your freedoms. They're going to continue to attack your freedom to bear arms, your Second Amendment rights, and a whole host of other freedoms, your religious liberty. Another thing in COVID, I mean, we had churches shutting down, not able to meet, but yet strip clubs were open. Complete insanity. And I'm thankful in South Carolina we didn't see the extent of that, but we saw a little bit of it here. And we don't never need to let that happen again. So I know that's a lot. I've got a couple minutes left. Do I have any questions? I've been talking the whole time. If anybody has a question, I know we need to turn the mic over to Solicitor Pascoe here in a minute. But any questions before we do that? Yes, sir.
Thanks. Unfortunately, this question is really addressed to both of you. I promise to support David.
That's a safe position.
Yeah, very good, but this question really is to both of you. A 10-second background. I've been down here about 3 years, moved here from New York. Couldn't wait to get out of a blue state and come to a dead red state.
Yes, sir.
And yet I read about cases like Logan Federico, murdered by somebody that had been convicted 25 times of a felony. And I don't understand how that happens when everybody's pro-police, conservative, prosecute, protect people. If I read in the New York Post, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash. But it happened right here in Columbia.
Right.
So, two-faced questions. One is, how does that happen when everybody seems to be on board? And two, what can you do about it?
Brian, that's a great question. I'm going to try to keep it short with the answer. One, I've already addressed judicial reform. Right now we have no accountability for judges and the decisions they make, because you have 185 votes in the General Assembly, and when everybody's responsible, nobody is. So we have to change the way we elect judges first. Secondly, and I remember Solicitor Duffy Stone down in Bluffton in the low part of the state. He and I and Solicitor Pascoe and others fought this battle about 7 or 8 years ago. The General Assembly wanted to pass a sentencing reform bill that actually took away mandatory minimums, that took away the amount of time these guys serve in jail. We need the exact opposite of that. And one of the things we've advocated, the solicitors have, and a lot of the sheriffs, is for truth in sentencing. And so right now we have a small category of crimes, murder, rape, some high-level drug trafficking, or day-for-day sentences with no parole. But the vast majority of crimes in South Carolina, including all those that were committed by this guy that killed Logan Federico and murdered her, were these property offenses, drug offenses. And what you notice if you look at his record is he was actually getting some not substantial, but 5-year sentences, 7-year sentences. He'd only served, a year or two of that. And I know that this is a frustration that we've had as prosecutors for years. I still don't understand, and I do this every day. I don't understand the formula that the Department of Corrections uses on most crimes for letting them out of jail. So how do you have a guy that gets a 5-year sentence and only does 1 year of it? Makes no sense. So we have to change this at the legislative level. We need to reclassify all of our crimes to where everybody, when they leave the courtroom, when you leave the courtroom as a victim, as the law enforcement officer, even the defendant, everybody needs to know what that sentence means. And right now in South Carolina, for the vast majority of our crimes, we don't know what the sentence means. And they're serving way too little time for these crimes. So Judicial Reform 1, Truth in Sentencing 2, those are the two main things that I think are going to help us get past this thing where it's revolving door. So, thank you all for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
We invited there, as I understand it, there are 3 announced candidates for the Republican nomination right now, and the third is Senator Goldfinch, but he had a conflict tonight. We did invite him, so we were all invited, but he could not make it. So next up we have Solicitor David Pascoe. He's solicitor from the 1st District, and he's been doing that since 2014, I believe.
2005.
Since 2005, that's kind of like.
I look that young now. I look like somebody.
This one will give you the room. That one just goes to our
I know. Ready? All right. Good evening, everybody. Give me 1 minute, okay? That's it. Thank you, man. Thank you. All right. First, my name's David Pascoe, and I'm running for Attorney General. Y'all ready to stir it up, cause a little trouble tonight? Yeah. Y'all want to talk about corruption? Yeah. All right. But first, nobody leaves here without taking a Pascoe palm card. You got me? I have a Sicilian wife. And if you do not get one from her before you leave, she's going to make you an offer you will be afraid to refuse. You understand? She's in the back actually negotiating with Miss Nance. We have 4 sons. She's trying to get one of Mrs. Nance's daughters. She was the person with the 9 children. All right, because I have a Sicilian wife, and because my mother came off the boat from Sicily in 1948 with papers, I only have 2 more days I get to say this. Happy Italian American Heritage Month, everybody. Huh? In the words of President Trump, we love the Italians. Okay? He does one more thing, and he will catapult George Washington in the Pascoe Book of Best Presidents. Bring back my Washington Redskins. In the era of wokeness, and bring back my Redskins. A little bit about myself. For almost as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a prosecutor. And for 35 years, I've lived that dream. 3 years as a law clerk at the United States Attorney's Office, Durham Lost Trust for those who were here during those days. In the last 32 years as a state prosecutor. Almost 12 of those years as an assistant prosecutor, and over 20 years now as the elected First Circuit Solicitor of Orangeburg, Calhoun, and Dorchester counties. Yes, I look younger than that, though, don't I? Yeah. And I've lived the dream. I have been on court TV several times. I've tried successfully several hundred violent crime indictments. But I tell you that the most challenging days of my 32 years as a prosecutor, when I was your special prosecutor during the State House corruption probe. And it was challenging because those same defendants, those legislators that I was bringing in front of the judges, who elects those judges? The defendants. And that's when I realized that you cannot have an independent judiciary, which is what we strive for, when they are solely hired by the legislature, fired by the legislature, and solely funded by the legislature. So Google my name. The word judicial reform came up for the first time January 6, 2022, when David Pascoe, then a Democrat, went before the Republican Party in Greenville and said, we need something called judicial reform in South Carolina. We got to get the lawyer legislators off the JMSC. That's when I decided, after the corruption probe, that we need to change the way we picked our judges. And there's another reason why this was a challenging prosecution with these legislators. A number of prosecutors turned down the opportunity to prosecute those legislators. They turned it down because they feared going after those legislators. So who was I going to call on to get help on? Because trust me, I needed all the help I could get taking on the most powerful men in the state. I called on this pretty guy right here. Right there. That good-looking guy right there. And tonight, I want to recognize him in all seriousness. Because if it was not for your solicitor, Kevin Brackett, we would not have been able to get those convictions that I'm about to tell you about in the state grand jury probes. I'd ask you to give him a huge round of applause. And I didn't give him, he's in the back, I didn't give him that recognition because he endorsed me. But I did have to call him a good-looking guy because he endorsed me. That was part of the contract.
You said you weren't going to lie.
Well, but despite all the obstacles that we had, we were able to issue a state grand jury report that I would ask you, Scott, I would ask you would share this Facebook. You got it. If anybody wants it, email it to them so they can have the websites on where to go for the grand jury report. But we issued a state grand jury report. It outlines the corruption in Columbia. It talks about our weak ethics laws. We also took down the most powerful person in the South Carolina legislature, the Speaker of the House. We had him convicted and removed from office. We kept going. We convicted and removed from office the President pro tem of the Senate, the most powerful man in the Senate, for money laundering almost $150,000 of his campaign account to his personal wallet. We took down the 2 former majority leaders of the South Carolina House for using their position to make money, and we sent to prison. I tried him and I sent him to prison, the former chairman of the South Carolina House Judiciary. So if you want a fighter, you know you have one in me. Oh, I also got the best nickname of my career, the Grim Reaper of the legislature, David Pascoe. Loved it. Trust me, thank you. Trust me, I got a lot of rated R nicknames that I didn't put up there during that probe, okay? Look, if it wasn't for the help from Kevin Brackett and SLED and even the FBI and my staff, all these people would be in power today if it was up to the prosecutors to turn that case down. All these people would be in power today if it was up to the people who tried to stop my grand jury probe. But they're not in power today. But you know what I call that? A good start. Because I wanted to go further. And if you read the grand jury report, you'll see why I wanted to go further. Corruption runs deep in Columbia, South Carolina. Very deep. And I was about to go further, but our Supreme Court said, Pascoe, you have to stop. You have to stop because you're not the Attorney General. So I've decided to do something about that. I'm running for Attorney General to go back to Columbia, South Carolina and finish the job I started. Because my friends, and don't get nervous, Tommy Pope and I have been friends for over 30 years. This is the swamp. And these are the leading swamp monsters. Now, the vast majority of these lawyer legislators are outstanding people. They are great public servants, including my good friend Tommy Pope. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later too. But there are more than a handful of these lawyer legislators who are up there for only one reason: to put their hand in the public till and to help their friends put their hand in the public purse to enrich their wallets. That's going to come to an end when I'm your Attorney General. And I just don't talk the talk. But your solicitor, Kevin Brackett, and I walked the walk. I went before with my friend Kevin Brackett, that House ad hoc committee, looked them right in the eyes and told them how unethical their behavior has been, some of them. Called them out right there to their faces. And because of this, as you can imagine, I don't have many friends in Columbia. And they've spent a lot of money in the last couple of years to take me on. And that's fine. They have spent money on digital ads calling me an undercover MAGA man. They have sent thousands of dollars in mail saying David Pascoe is courting MAGA because I've gone and spoken to Republican groups all over the state. By the way, I'm hoping they send these out for the June primary this year. You think they'll help me? Huh? And then, of course, I know many of you got texts yesterday. Pascoe, the former Democrat, he's really just a rhino. Well, let me tell you something. You can call me a rhino. I don't care. But don't call me a liberal. Because you look at my record. I've always had the most conservative record of anybody in the race, period. And I have the most conservative record of anybody in the Attorney General's race. I am the only person who has put people on death row. I am the first public official in the state of South Carolina that called for the firing squad as a means of execution in South Carolina. And when I did that, Scott, they laughed at me. I got phone calls from legislators that were Republicans and Democrats saying, Pascoe, you're crazy. And I said, you just wait. And I worked with legislators like Tommy Pope and other legislators on both sides of the aisle, and we got it passed. When our state, do y'all even know about this in York? The disastrous plutonium deal out of Savannah River? Anybody know about it? Some of you do, I see you should. When our state gave $75 million to a law firm for losing a case that they didn't even settle, not one legislator called it out. Then we found out that lawyer legislators have government contracts with the state of South Carolina, making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not one legislator called it out. One person did call it out. I called it out. I sent a public letter. I called it cronyism. I said it's unethical and it's flat out wrong. And because of that little ripple, just like that ripple when I said judicial reform in 2022, which has now become a wave, because of a little ripple, that letter, that $75 million is now in litigation. When I'm your Attorney General, if that's still in litigation, that $75 million is going back to you. Liberal judges. Anybody remember James Smith? He ran for judge. I supported his opponent because James Smith is a Planned Parenthood endorsed, pro-choice, former lawyer legislator. I like James Smith as a human being. He fought for our country. He's a great American. I just didn't want another liberal lawyer legislator in Todd Rutherford's hip pocket on the bench. He was unopposed because my candidate dropped out because every Republican almost and Democrat supported James Smith. I put this flyer together. I activated Republican voters, and I made sure that y'all scared your legislators into making sure they didn't vote for unopposed James Smith, and he is not on the bench because of that. Call me a rhino, I don't care, but you call me a liberal, we're going to have some problems. I mean it. Oh, and check, I forgot about this, David. We were talking about, this is the guy that wants to run for Attorney General. He voted for James Smith for judge. He didn't get your message not to vote for James Smith. Make sure he gets into the Attorney General's race. So back in January 2022, I decided to go on a statewide tour to talk about corruption and judicial reform. And I opened the invitation to any group around the state. I didn't care if you're a Democrat, Independent, Green Party, Republican. Invite me and I will come and talk about corruption and I'll talk about judicial reform. I went to about 24 groups across the state, from Hilton Head to Greenville, Horry County, everywhere, 24. Do you know what party all 24 groups that invited Democrat David Pascoe to talk about those issues were? Republican. And that's when you realize, Pascoe, if you're going to fight corruption in this state, it's going to be with the GOP. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight corruption for you. And this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to now concentrate and only talk to you about two things, crime and corruption. And the things I'm going to do as your Attorney General. My first pledge is that I will not run for any office for the rest of my life other than Attorney General. For too long, AG has stood for aspiring governor. And I'm not knocking anybody, especially not the current occupant. I'm just speaking facts nationally. That's what AG has always stood for, aspiring governor. I have only one goal, to make South Carolina safer and less corrupt, and protect our state from federal overreach. Those are the things I'm going to concentrate on. If you decide you want to run for another office, Scott, like governor or Congress, you have to make friends. I have no interest in making friends. None. I will only be your Attorney General. And these are the things we're going to do to reduce crime. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to do a better job of protecting children in our state, like Stephen Frederico's baby, like his daughter. We're going to do a better job. We're going to advocate the death penalty not just for child trafficking, but child rape. We are going to drastically increase the conviction rate of child porn cases. Well, we got to come out and just tell the truth. The conviction rate in South Carolina, it is not any one person's fault. It's David Pascoe's fault, it's David Stumbo's fault, it's Kevin Brackett's fault, it's all our faults. We got to do a better job on child pornography cases. And my plan to do that, real quickly in the interest of time, is I'm going to give the money back to the solicitor's offices and let them prosecute those cases locally, so they'll be accountable to you. We're not going to prosecute these cases in Columbia, South Carolina. I want a Greenville solicitor prosecuting those cases in Greenville. I want a York County prosecutor accountable to you, the voters, prosecuting those cases. And then we'll see better results. And I'm going to reestablish the Youth Mentor Program. Believe it or not, you can read it in the Philadelphia Inquirer that I helped get started in 1994. Great program. Again, ask me a question about it, because I'm going to be quick about it now. It's a program where children continue to get in trouble, but nonviolent stuff. Before we send them to DJJ, where they're going to learn to be a better criminal, I assign them to churches, youth organizations, and the churches assign mentors, tutors, and they report back to the solicitor's office and family court on that child's home life, their school life, and we put them down a path with direction and not a path of crime. Corruption. I believe with all my heart that a prosecutor's first job is to be where corruption needs an adversary. And that's where you're going to find David Pascoe. And this is what we're going to do to end the culture of corruption in Columbia, South Carolina. And it's so important we do that because it trickles all the way down to county councils and municipalities, doesn't it? Haven't we seen that with impunity? This is what I'm going to do. The first thing, actually it's the second thing. I'm going to show you in a minute the first thing we're going to do. But the second thing I'm going to do on day one as your Attorney General is I'm going to establish a public corruption unit made up of 8 prosecutors and several investigators. The public corruption unit is going to work with all the ethics committees in their complaints. We are going to look at both the House complaints, House ethics, and Senate ethics complaints. Because let me tell you something. I'm not going to let the Senate and the House ethics committees, which are the fox guarding the hen house, tell me as your Attorney General what a crime is. I'll decide. We'll decide what crimes are. When I see a state senator or a House member buying suits with his campaign account, I'll take that case away from House ethics and Senate ethics. We are going to review every elected official statement of economic interest, every campaign disclosure report. I'm going to call on retired people with a lot of time on their hands to be volunteers with the Public Corruption Unit to do this with us and for us, to red flag this stuff so we can look at it and see if it's a crime. How much time do I have? Because oh, okay, we're good. All right. I mean, usually, y'all, the crimes are right under our noses. They're right there in the reports. There are people right now paying them money from their office accounts. I'm a solicitor. I'm not allowed to do that. My salary is set by the state. But there are elected officials doing that right now, and they're getting away with it, not under my watch. You're fired. Those this is the first thing I'm going to do. I'll even ask President Trump if he'll help me out and do a video for me. Okay? The first thing I'm going to do as your Attorney General is I'm going to fire every legislator from a government contract. We did not elect them so they could put their hands in the public purse. We elected them to serve us. They will be fired on day one. And now I'm going to end. I want to talk to you all about the death penalty. I want to talk to you about one of the things we're going to do to reduce crime in South Carolina. And again, get my poem card, because I've got a much more detailed plan on the internet and on our website, all right? But I want to talk to you about the death penalty because it has been in the news a lot lately. These are the two men that I put on death row, Michael Mighty and Kenneth Justice. About several months ago, I was having lunch with a prosecutor, a solicitor, and he told me, out of nowhere, we were eating lunch, I wasn't even talking about the death penalty. He started justifying why he didn't seek the death penalty, why he dropped it on a cop killer and others. I promise you, I didn't judge him, didn't say a word, didn't even comment. But on the way home, I did judge him a little bit. And I realized that maybe he didn't try it because death penalties, Kevin Brackett and Tommy Pope can tell you this because they've tried them. They are a different breed. It's called death is different. As David Stumbo pointed out, they're different. They're heavyweight championship fights. You know as a prosecutor, if you're going on a death penalty case, that you are going to be called everything from unethical, immoral, a liar, and accused of prosecutorial misconduct for maybe 20, 25 years during the appeal process. They are fights. They're different. Death is different. I realized maybe he didn't go for the death penalty because a lot of solicitors had not done it before. So as your Attorney General, I'm going to make sure that all 16 solicitors' offices, because that's how many we have, are trained in how we try death penalty cases. Yes, sir, there's 16 circuits. And I'm going to make sure that they're all trained. Now, I told y'all earlier that for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a prosecutor. The truth is, for as long as I can remember, I actually wanted to be a cop. You do not grow up in the 70s watching Kojak, Adam 12, and Hill Street Blues and not want to be a police officer when you're a kid. I kid you not. In the 3rd grade, I went to a school called Chamberlain Elementary School in Richmond, Virginia. I want y'all to remember that. Chamberlain Elementary School, Richmond, Virginia, 3rd grade. I went to show and tell as Lieutenant Theo Kojak of the Manhattan South. I had my grandfather's fedora, I had the glasses, I had a badge. A lady yelled out at me last week when I told her, she said, "Did you shave your head?" I said, "No, but this is true." When Miss Hodges told me I got an A, I looked right at her and I said, "Who loves you, baby?" I didn't know I wanted to be a prosecutor until 1983. I was 15 years old, and I read a book called The Pursuit of Justice by, yes, a Democrat, Attorney General Bobby Kennedy. And he talked about fighting corruption and how he went after the mafia and how you go after dirty politicians. And I said, man, that's the kind of guy I want to be like. The kind of man who, when they went to him when he was Attorney General, said, "You can't prosecute this person, Mr. Attorney General. Why? It's your father's best friend, and President Kennedy doesn't want you to prosecute him." The next words out of Kennedy's mouth were, "Is it the right thing to do?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "Prosecute them." And he went to prison. That's when I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. 1983. Something else happened in 1983. Michael Mighty was born right outside of Richmond, Virginia. Michael Mighty also went to Chamberlain Elementary School. I don't know what he went as for show and tell in Miss Hodges' class. But when he was 15, he also professed to the world what he wanted to be. See, Michael Mighty got into a 9-hour standoff with law enforcement. And when they arrested him, he gave a statement. And he told those police officers when I get older, I want to kill one of you. I want to kill a cop. Marty went to DJJ. He got out, assaulted someone, and went to prison in Virginia. I was living the life from 1993 through 2004, prosecuting hundreds of cases as a state prosecutor. That's when I was on court TV. I was having a blast. And I decided in March of 2004 that I wanted to run for solicitor of Orangeburg, Calhoun, and Dorchester counties. Remember, mostly Calhoun County. And so in March of 2004, I filed for solicitor. A month later, Michael Motti got out of prison in Virginia. He went down the street from his home and he murdered a man with a machete. He stole a gun, stole a car, drove to North Carolina, and on video, walks right up to the store clerk, puts the beer down, takes out a gun, shoots him at point blank range. When the store clerk was on the ground, he reached over, left his left palm print, and shot him one more time to make sure he was dead. He took $60 of beer and left. Drove to Columbia, South Carolina, where he carjacked someone. I theorized in court that the only reason he let that person live was because he maybe was running low on ammunition. He then drives down I-26 towards Charleston. He gets off at exit 139, where we drove right by today, my wife and I, in Calhoun County. Stopped at a Hess station. When he was at the Hess station, the women got nervous because he was casing it to rob it. Law enforcement came. He took off through the woods and he got away from law enforcement and found a pond house. Broke in and realized he hit pay dirt, hit his dream. He realized he was in the home of Captain Jim Myers of the Orangeburg Police Department. He knew it because of the things on the wall. He knew it because of the police files there, which Marty rummaged through. Marty laid in wait. When Captain Myers got home that night, Marty executed him. He burned his body. He took his uniform, his police uniform, took his badge, took his .22 automatic issue rifle, got in the police issue truck and took off for Florida. He got pulled over in Florida. When the officers pulled him over, Marty got out with the weapon, pointed it towards the officers, but then took off running and was apprehended by the two officers because they had a Belgian Malinois, a canine. When they got back to headquarters, one of the officers then found out Marty was wanted for being a cop killer. And in a moment of gratitude, he walked up to Michael Marty and said to him, "You don't have to say a word, but for whatever it's worth, thank you for letting me go home to my family, because we stood no match with you and that weapon." Marty's quote back, and I had the officer testify to this in court, "I only had 2 bullets left in a 3-shot I only had 2 bullets left in a 3-shot burst, and I couldn't get you, your partner, or that fucking dog." That's evil. I tell you that because before I got elected solicitor, I filed for the death penalty on him when I was solicitor. And before the trial, Michael Marty's wife asked me to consider giving him life. She said, "I've forgiven him even though he doesn't want forgiveness. And David, I just don't know if I want the fight." And I understood it. And I told her, "Amy, any other case, I would do what you want. But I can't do this here. Because they'll say, if I do that, yeah, I got an easy out you. But if I don't go for death on this kind of evil, they'll say that David Pascoe in the state of South Carolina won't stand up for anyone if they won't stand up for Captain Jim Myers." So I tried Michael Marty. I convicted Michael Marty. Michael Marty was sentenced to death. And this year he went before the firing squad and was executed. My pledge to you, and I see my time is up, but my pledge to you is that when I'm your Attorney General, we will never have a prosecutor justify not going for the death penalty on a cop killer. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to answer some questions. I'll stick around.
If anybody wants to talk with the candidates, I'm sure they'd be happy to stick around and answer any questions you've got. So, Well, that was a couple of very impressive presentations, as one might expect from guys that have spent time in front of juries.